Hello and welcome to This Week in Space with your host, me, this guy who's got two thumbs and is your host, this guy, Joan Emerson Bell, or Blind Stallion Space Wizard. I am an astrologer and an advisor for the excellent AstroStar Live app, where you can find me along with some other great astrologers, giving readings, doing reports, telling stories, having fun, teaching classes, doing all things astrology related. So if you're interested in getting down with a thriving astrological community, I highly recommend y'all check out AstroStar Live. And again, you can find me there. I'm available for readings. I do some other talks and whatnot over there. But as we do at 11 a.m. on Monday morning, at least Mountain Time, maybe it's 10 a.m. your time, maybe it's 1 p.m., maybe it's another time. But as we do on Monday mornings, we like to go over what's going down in the astro weather of the week to help you all prepare to know what the cosmos is throwing at you so you can be dodging it like Neo in the Matrix, right? And one of the reasons that I like to do this is this is kind of how I learned astrology, is through listening and reading and researching what was going on, and then seeing how those archetypal energies appeared in my life. And also I think it's helpful to provide context to what's happening in the greater world, in the larger system, and feeling the flows and the trials, tribulations, the kind of pulls of the planetary forces. And through understanding what those archetypes are asking for, we can have a better awareness of how to respond instead of reacting or going into a doom spiral. We can respond from a maybe more resourced place, or at least have some context to recognize that this may be challenging at the moment, but it will pass. And in being able to recognize both of those things, we can consider what is the best and most skillful way that I can show up for this moment, right? Oh, hold on, let me put this on. Do not disturb. Okay, thank you. Um, all right. So, without further ado, how's everybody doing out there? Nice to see you. Thanks for tuning in on another Monday. We're going over the last week in August in this week's report, and this is all about Venus. Venus is basically making aspects to all of the outer planets. We get two supportive harmonious trines, and in between, sandwiched in between, we get a slightly challenging opposition to Neptune. But Venus is really making the rounds of the outer planets, and the outer planets beyond the realm of Saturn, right, is beyond kind of what is in the physical, what is in the known, what is in the visible world. So Venus, the planet of love, values, relationship, and aesthetics, is sort of doing a little dance with everything that is beyond the visible, right? So a lot of invisible, transpersonal, and larger than life forces are playing upon our value system, our relational dynamics, our sense of what we like, what we don't like, what we find beautiful and pleasing, what we are sort of repulsed by. And we're getting an opportunity to sort of touch in with that which is beyond the realm of the known or beyond the visible, through our kind of value system and the ways that we engage in relationships. Um, and so, yeah, in the comments, we have a lot of thoughts about the experience of romantic relationships. And I think, romantic relationships create a container, and I think this is one of the ways that Venus functions, is that through romantic relationship, we get a better understanding of what my values are. Because, in romantic relationships, somebody might say, like, do you want to do this? And there's the even if we don't, we might say, sure, honey, of course, right? And there are all these ways that we can engage in people pleasing, or shutting down, or shutting off, or keeping distance. And so I think that this week is an opportunity to see how we kind of function in alignment with our true self in the context and container and the mirror, right, of being with another person. And Venus's glyph is the can be seen as a mirror, as a hand mirror, right? And so part of Venus's role is to mirror us through relationship, through the other, through partnership. And this is not necessarily romantic partnership. This can also be friendship, but the other people that we come in contact with, that we have meaningful relationships with, who hold us accountable and provide a mirroring of how we show up. So a couple other things that are as Venus is moving through the realm of the outer planets, they are also moving from Virgo, which is a sign of their fall, into their home sign of Libra. So we're also getting a shift in how we are able to resource ourselves in terms of our values and relationships and aesthetic qualities. So let's begin at the beginning, as they say, starting off tomorrow, Tuesday, August the 27th. So this is Venus in Virgo, trining Uranus in Taurus. Also, Venus's sort of exploration of the outer planets goes in order. First, we have Venus trining Uranus. Second, we have Venus opposing Neptune. Third, we have Venus trining Pluto. So sort of moving outward from Saturn, right, into the farthest reaches of the universe, touching on of the solar system, touching on the Kuiper belt with Pluto. So anyway, Venus trining Uranus, and a trine is a supportive and harmonious aspect. So this is can bring some positive things for it, and at least some ease and an opportunity for some integration. And I think that this is important because I don't know if y'all remember last week, but that was messed up. There was a lot of tension, a lot of struggle, a lot of like building energy, and it felt like pretty overwhelming. I don't know how y'all took it, but I felt pretty overwhelmed. And with this week, or especially with a trine in a harmonious aspect, we get an opportunity to sort of integrate because it's easy, right? We don't have to work so hard. We don't have to struggle. With a square and opposition, there's all this tension and struggle and things trying to get their way, right? Planets at cross purposes, or parts of the self that are at cross purposes, trying to negotiate an outcome. And a trine is more of a easy flowing and harmonious relationship. So it's an opportunity for some integration, which can be nice. And I think, one of the ways that I experience the planetary relationships functioning is it's like these periods of challenge and difficulty that promote growth through, needing to work really hard, or facing adversity in the world and in ourselves. And then we come into other periods where there's a flow and there's some ease. And those periods help us to integrate those challenging, more difficult periods of struggle with the harder aspects. And so, when we get a trine, it's nice to like lean into it and not have to work so hard, and just allow whatever emerges to come up. And now Uranus is a planet that's associated with insight and revelation and inspiration, also connected with revolution. So there's a sense that maybe we are revolutionizing some of the ways that we do relationship, right? This can also help us update our value system and revolutionize our value system. Venus connected with relationship and values, and you're going to hear that a lot this week, right? At least in this report. I don't know about I can't speak for outside of this space, but in this report, we're going to be talking a lot about values and relationship. So Venus is currently in their fall in Virgo. This trend is occurring with Venus in the Earth sign of Virgo, Uranus in the Earth sign of Taurus, both these planets at 27 degrees and 15 arc minutes. So this is an Earth trine, right? So stabilizing, grounding, like maybe some practical elements in it. Now Venus is in fall in Virgo, right? And so they're having a harder time kind of expressing themselves or being able to sort of have the things that they want. A planet in fall has its strengths kind of used against it. So it needs to work a lot harder because every time it tries to like do its thing, it sort of, backfires a little bit. And so Venus might be feeling a sense of boredom, right? There might be a desire for stimulation or distraction, social activity. And this can cause us to kind of seek out excitement. New forms of entertainment, new experiences of beauty or pleasure are things that are sort of on brand with this, right? Um, and this can help push us into kind of the radical shift that Uranus can bring, right? Service-oriented Virgo might feel like a little sort of just dull and boring, and the everyday practicality of things might be weighing on us. So how do we spice that up a little bit, right? And I think that this is a really great day, Tuesday, tomorrow, to do something different, right? To think about breaking out of our daily routines and our daily practices and try something new. Right. And as we break up old patterns, we kind of create space and the opportunity for something new to come into the system. And I think that this can be really helpful, right? Because if Uranus is looking to shake things up, right? It's looking to update our systems. And if we're doing the same thing all the time, it's a little harder to do that. So by taking a new route to work, trying something new, calling up like new friends, people that you don't usually hang out with, it begins to break up those old patterns and it gives a little space for that sort of Uranian energy to come in and revitalize the system. So, you know, I recommend like trying new food, taking a different route to work, listening to different music, go look at art or see an experimental film, right? These are Venus deals with art, right? And Uranus is kind of new and radical. And so looking at new forms of art or things that you don't really, aesthetic things that you don't take in usually can be a good way of honoring this transit, right? And yeah, if you can't do these things, do something simple, right? Break up your routine in some way. Try a new, like a different place to eat lunch, right? And as we think about like breaking up the routine and bringing in a new type of beauty, think about the ways that joy can enter the system in a new way, right? Or just allowing ourselves to be present with the unknown. And I think that this is a really good way of honoring the kind of harmonious relationship between Venus and Uranus. Right. This is also a really good time to make art because Venus deals with art and beauty and aesthetics, and Uranus is inspiration. Right. So there can be an Uranian inspiration or like kind of an electric quality or an idea that begins to emerge. And I think that practicing some Venusian arts, right? Dance, music, poetry, painting, whatever, even cooking, right? Can be a way of sort of working with those flashes of inspiration that Uranus brings, right? So, uh, oh, nice. Somebody is saying that they're have the urge to try a new hair color, which I think is great. And then somebody else is asking, how long is this transit for? So Venus moves pretty quickly. We're sort of approaching it. We've been approaching it over the weekend, so it's kind of been building. And then it will be exact on Tuesday, and then it will begin to dissipate. And I think by, give me a second. Venus moves into Libra on Thursday, the 29th. So it will be out of sign for that trine to be exact. It'll still be within orb, but I think that energy will begin to shift. But I think that, again, the Uranus, Venus helps to like kind of shake things up and right, shake things up and begins to bring in some new energy into the system around relationship, around values, around beauty, right? Um, oh, nice. Carrie saying that they just arranged their entire place for more artistic play. Excellent. I think that is a great way of showing up for it, right? And kind of preparing for the sort of inspiration of Uranus to strike. And when I was writing about this, I was thinking about, okay, like if you have the space and the time laying out like all of your artistic materials, or whatever sort of elements of harnessing inspiration that you need, and allowing just giving space on that day to see what emerges, and having the tools at your disposal. Not that you're necessarily going to like paint your masterpiece, but being able to sort of lasso that Uranian energy and begin to sort of roll with it, I think is a great way of showing up. This also like might help bring more excitement into relationships. Not that anyone's relationships are necessarily unexciting, but there might need to be shifts in relationship, and this is a really good way, good day to begin, talking about that, or seeing what might need to like shift. And I think approaching this with like play, curiosity, creativity is a great way of showing up for this transit. Carrie says that romance is dead. Respect. Okay. Speaking of romance being dead, the next transit that we're going to be talking about is Wednesday, August the 28th. So as Venus is coming off of this harmonious trine, riding high, making art, feeling sort of stimulated and excited, feeling some revolutionary shifts in terms of relationship, in terms of values, maybe has made some great art. They're going to come into an opposition with Neptune at 29 degrees and 8 arc minutes of Virgo and Pisces. Venus in Virgo, Neptune in Pisces, these are mutable signs. And so also, these are sort of happening one after the other. So there's going to be a blending of these energies. And something that might be important is figuring out how to kind of separate these out a little bit, right? Because it can be a little confusing. And that is one of the things about a Neptune transit. It is confusing, right? And so both like Neptune and Uranus kind of deal with ideals, right? Neptune is the fantasy. Uranus is the kind of, this is the idealized vision of what I'm striving for, what I desire, what I want, right? And Neptune is like, this is the fantasy that I just want to get lost in this daydream. Yeah, here comes Neptune making us hurt our own feelings. Exactly. Right. And in this transit, we have Venus, which is our value system, in opposition to Neptune, which is this kind of idealized fantasy of how it should be. Right. And I think that this really accentuates the opposition or the polarity of Virgo and Pisces, which is where these two planets are residing. Venus in Virgo, Neptune in Pisces. And so Virgo, like Pisces, is the kind of greater vision of how it could be and how it should be, right? And then Virgo is trying to like put that into practice in 3D physical reality, right? With all of our imperfections. And so Virgo is constantly trying to perfect the thing to bring it to the ideal. And I think that this is going to be sort of played out through the Neptunian and Venusian parts of the self, right? And in evolutionary astrology, Neptune is thought of as the higher octave of Venus, right? And so we have Neptune as universal love of like oneness and interconnection, and then we have Venus as terrestrial love, personal love, or interpersonal love, right? The connection that we form with each other through our independent bodies, right? And how those connections create that sense of a bigger Neptunian connection, right? Of that transpersonal connection, but we're still in the Saturnian realm, right? In our separate physical forms. And so Neptune is longing for that enmeshment, for that merging, for that universal connection. And Venus is is playing that out through, our personal interactions and our personal relationships. And so I think with this opposition, one of the issues that we're facing is Neptune is like, come on, I just want to like be one with everything. And Venus in Virgo is like, I'm not like, that's what I desire and I can't get there, right? Venus in Virgo has a really hard time because they're constantly like, this isn't good enough. I'm trying to like make it better, right? Virgo, kind of a harsh taskmaster, seeking for the idealized perfection, right? Or seeking to make the physical perfect to line up with that idealized vision. And so Venus can be like, it's not good enough, they're not good enough, I'm not good enough. There can be a lot of stories about around what's good enough, right? And in this transit, we have our values, Venus, in opposition with our ideals, or Neptune, right? And so learning and noticing this tension point, right, where our value system might be kind of out of alignment with our ideals or vice versa, right? And I think in an opposition, we are learning to hold both things, right? I think that um, you know, with Neptunian transits, also there can be a lot of confusion. And this can have our ideals supersede our logic, and we might get swept up in misinformation or miscommunication, or let our longings, right, get the best of us. So this week, especially midweek, watch out for things that are too good to be true. And again, we could be like riding high off the like kind of energy of the electrical energy of that Uranus square or Uranus trine, and coming in to this and like seeing, Neptune across the room and being like, oh my God, that's the thing. That's the thing that I've been waiting for. Right. But, I think with Venus, especially in hard aspect to Neptune, there's an opportunity, there's the tendency to see the world through rose-colored glasses. And if we're wearing rose-colored glasses, we cannot see the red flags, right? Because the red flags just blend in to that sort of rose-colored world that we are looking at. And so I think it is a really important time to check in with the red flags, right? Or just like take off the glasses for a minute and see if there are any very obvious red flags waving, right? And I think that this is also like a time that misinformation can play on our emotions, right? Because I think that there is a heightened emotional state that we can get swept away in the sort of illusion or delusion of Neptune, right? Um, so let me just yeah, and so just coming back to this idea of, Neptune as this transpersonal like oneness with everything. I think that there's the vision of Neptune as this like perfect love that Venus and Virgo is striving for. And this idea that there's a love that has the power to save and redeem us, right? But Venus and Virgo, like, right, always seeking that thing, but never getting there and never being satisfied, and believing that like it's not good enough, I'm not good enough, right? How do we sort of stop that kind of cycle of longing or craving and recognize what we have, right? And recognize what is good enough and come into acceptance of what we have in this moment. And as I was thinking about this, and thinking about Venus and Neptune as kind of like parts of our attachment system, right? And Neptune is the longing for that like oneness of being sort of dissolving into the everything, and Venus as our kind of attachment on a terrestrial level, right? Connection with other people, and feeling that attunement, right? And I was thinking about attachment theory, and D.W. Winnicott had this idea of the good enough mother, which he says the good enough mother, or which is not necessarily the infant's own mother, is one who makes active adaptation to the infant's needs, an active adaptation that gradually lessens according to the infant's growing ability to account for failure of adaptation and to tolerate the results of frustration. And so basically, his theory um, talks about when a child is born, there is like total attunement with the mother, right? The mother is like there, or the parent is there, kind of tuning to the child's every need, right? And the baby experiences themselves as part, or experiences the mother as part of themselves, or the parent as part of themselves, right? There is no separation between self and other, right? And this is kind of that Neptunian consciousness that there can be a longing to return to, right? The lack of separation, the kind of collapse of self and other. Um, and this comes from that like total attunement to the child's needs, right? Um, as the mother begins to separate their attention, or the parent begins to separate their attention from the baby, the child experiences a sense of frustration, right? Being like, what, like, come on, like, I want whatever I want, right? And this creates like a sense of frustration that helps the child to increase the window of tolerance, right? Being able to sit with that frustration. If we take this to Venus and Neptune, it's like, I want this like total perfect, a mesh man, this like vision that I saw in this movie that like, this is how it's supposed to be. And it's not like that, right? And so we can spiral out and start making up stories about how we're not good enough, it's not good enough, everything's a failure, or we can learn to sit in that kind of frustration, right? And increase our window of tolerance for things not being exactly like we want them to be, and that also being okay, right? And as the child begins to separate from the mother, they begin to have a different form of mental activity and to develop a sense of the external world, right? And through the caregiver also continuing to attune to the child, right? It's not ignoring them, but having an empathic connection with the child that is not totally like waiting on them hand and foot, and through maintaining this empathic connection but not total attention, the child begins to develop awareness that they are a separate entity from the parent or caregiver, um, right? And so through this sort of good enough parenting, it is the child learning separation, right? Learning independence, learning individuality, right? And in some, with good enough parenting, a child has the ability to live in two worlds, the world of illusion, fantasy, and magic, which is the Neptunian world, and on the other hand, a world that does not always conform to their wishes, right? Which is the, sub-Saturnian realm where Venus is existing, right? And so being able to hold both of these things, hold this dialectic between that kind of fantastic, magical ideal of total connection and the reality that that's not always the case, right? And being able to sit with where those needs do get met without abandoning everything and going into a total meltdown. Right. And I think, part of this like good enough parenting is the realization that what the child desires, and I also have to say I'm not a parent, but what the child desires is not always able to be fulfilled, right? Parents and caregivers have to like make food, they have to do other things, they have to, engage in their life. And the growing infant, the child, the baby, has to learn to be with that sense of my needs are not always going to be met by this external source or by the other, right? And so I think that good enough parenting, right, is this sort of Venus and Virgo being like, okay, what is good enough? Right? What do I need? What level of attunement? What level of connection? What level of sort of that like sense of love is enough for me to feel good and to feel whole in my system, right? And how do I sit with and be okay with the places where that desire is not met, right? Where that sort of Neptunian oneness is not totally fulfilled, right? How are we doing? Oh, interesting. Somebody's saying that they just watched a talk about good enough parenting today, and yeah, about how like the relationship between parenting, good enough parenting, and patterns of narcissism. Interesting. And I think, I think one of the things that comes up with this is just like how to be okay and increase our tolerance for our needs not being totally met and fulfilled, right? Because Neptune can kind of have a meltdown with that. And it can also like cast some illusion and a glamour around a thing being like, oh, if I only do this, that, and the other thing, then I will like be in my happy place. And I don't know if that's actually true, right? And so I think being able to sit in the places where like maybe we feel like our needs are not met or we feel frustrated and seeing instead of dwelling on that, recognizing where we did have enough attunement and connection. And if we still need more, how do we ask for that, right? And maybe we can't ask for that from people who are unavailable to provide it, but like maybe we can shift and ask somebody else or sort of have that need met in a different way. Okay. So also on Wednesday, August the 28th, Mercury stations direct. Beow, beow, beow. Mercury is stationing direct at 21 degrees and 25 arc minutes of the fixed fire sign of Leo. This will be happening at 2:13 in the PM Pacific time, making that 5:13 in the PM Eastern time. So just a little recap, Mercury went retrograde on August the 4th at 4 degrees and 6 arc minutes of Virgo. And then Mercury retrograded back into Leo on August the 14th. And then Mercury will be stationing direct on the 28th. And then they will re-enter Virgo on September the 9th. And they will leave their shadow at 4 degrees and 6 arc minutes of Virgo on September the 11th. So Mercury is crossing and recrossing. Yes, praise be. Mercury is crossing and crossing and processing and reprocessing information and experiences that came up during Mercury's retrograde. So during the retrograde period, we have chaos, right? And we have chaos in places where we are used to having order, and this can be destabilizing and confusing. And this is why we don't sign contracts or get locked into things like big purchases that you can't get out of because we might not have all of the pertinent information that we need to make well-informed decisions. Because as Mercury retrogrades, new information tends to come to light. And so we don't want to make big decisions until we are able to have all the info and to weigh our options appropriately, right? So as we go through that retrograde process, like new things are coming up and we're kind of processing that information. And then Mercury stations direct and they start moving forward. And we're like, okay, like now I'm seeing how this is all fitting together. And we're able to put things into a bigger framework of understanding. Right. So now Mercury is moving direct and we're cleaning up some of the chaos of the retrograde, repairing miscommunications, putting things back in order, which helps us to make better informed decisions about our lives. So from now until September the 11th, Mercury is making one final pass over that area of space that they just retrograded through. And so this is, again, helping us clean up some of the miscommunications and confusions of the retrograde, and also helping us to make better informed decisions based on the information that we gathered during the retrograde, right? And so remember that this is a time of the last pass, right? So going over one last time, the things that we have been reviewing and rethinking and reconsidering, right? And so this is tying up loose ends. And Mercury doesn't start to explore new territory until after September the 11th. So again, I would not like launch something new just yet. I would like take this time to really put the finishing touches and the last bits of polish on things before, we start doing new things. Okay, sound good? Mercury going direct, that's great. All right, moving right along. Thursday, August the 29th, Venus enters into Libra, and I'm gonna give this one a praise be as well. So Venus will be in Libra until September the 22nd when they enter into Scorpio, sign of their detriment. So Venus is in domicile in Libra, which is great. Venus has been in fall in Virgo, right? And planet in fall is like down low. They're in a hole. They're kind of in a depression, right? They don't have the kind of perspective that we get when we are raised up, right? So they're sort of all they can see is the kind of walls of the hole that they're stuck in, which can be a little challenging, right? And so on Thursday, Venus will climb out of this hole and go back home to Libra, which is their diurnal home. Right. So Libra is an active air sign, and one of the ways that I see Venus functioning in this, right? And also we can, I like to think about Venus like coming back to their house, right? And all the stuff that they like is there. They have like all the phone numbers of their friends, right? All the artwork that they like. Maybe there's a bunch of people hanging out by the pool, right? Scantily clad, listening to lounge music. I don't know. Whatever your kind of Venusian Libran vision is. But I think in Venus, right? Sorry, I think in Libra, which is an air sign, right? So it's about socializing, right? And it's diurnal, so it's about going out into the world. And so I think Venus and Libra likes to go and socialize and make connections between people. They like to go out. They like to press the flesh and engage with their adoring public, you know. And so and I think that they're also seeking like balance and harmony. And I think that they do this through beauty, right? Through artwork, through beauty, through creating beautiful environments, promotes that sense of ease and harmony, which promotes connection and the free flow of information. And so I think as Venus moves out of Virgo, which is, trying to get it right and make it perfect, right? And, learning these lessons of how to be with what is and what is good enough. Now, Venus gets to move into Libra, where they're able to create beauty and create connections between the self and others, which promote harmony and balance both internally and externally. Right? So good times to be had, especially socially, from September the 22nd, sorry, from August the 29th until September the 22nd. Okay, so Thursday, August the 29th. This is where it gets deep. So on the 29th, Venus in Libra, Venus having just entered Libra, comes into a trine with Pluto in Aquarius. This is at 0 degrees and 4 arc minutes of these air signs. Right. So just as Venus is entering into Libra, coming back home, being like, thank God, right? That hole I was in was so difficult, and I'm so happy to be home, right? Um, as soon as that occurs, right, Pluto, Lord of the underworld, who is retrograding their way back into Capricorn for one last caper, is going to come into a supportive trine. So we're getting this trine between Venus and Pluto, right? Like ships passing in the night. Venus is entering into Libra. Pluto is retrograding out of Aquarius back into Capricorn. So just this like brief moment of connection, of this harmonious connection, right? So some of the things that we can think about, right? Pluto is the shadow, Pluto is the unconscious, Pluto is the invisible, and Pluto is also power, right? Pluto is the power of the unconscious, Pluto is the power of the underworld, Pluto is power in general. Pluto also deals with riches and treasure, all of the riches that live under the surface, right? And so as we come into this harmonious aspect, this free flow of the trine, we can think about like the power of love is the first thing that comes to mind, right? And this can create like an activation of passion and desire, right? And I think that this also helps us to strengthen our values, right? And to also consider the drive for power, right? And how power is in alignment or out of alignment with our value system, right? And one of the things that we can do is notice where we hold power in our body, right? Notice where we hold power in our lives. and we can consider what is the container and how do we hold that power, right? How does it move through us? How does it show up in our relationships? Because remember, Libra is a very relational sign, right? How does it show up in our mental sphere? Because we're talking about air signs, right? So where is the power of ideas? Where is the power of information? Where is the power of communication? And what is our relationship to that? And what is the relationship of our value system to this power, right? And how does our value system inform our relationship to power? And I think that power is a really tricky one, and it can be very easy to be like, that's bad, right? Because we have examples of people who hold power that do atrocious things with it, right? And I think that there is this idea of like, if I have power, that means that other people are trying to take it, so I have to suppress them, right? Or like power is finite and it needs to be guarded, right? And people who seek it need to be suppressed so that I can hold it. And I don't think that's the case. I think that we all have power. I think that being in a body is powerful. Some bodies, through the way that societies are constructed, hold more power in like social context. But I think that being in a body, in a human body, has a lot of power inherently, and to recognize what that power is, where that resides in the self, and how we access that, right? And instead of trying to like disown that because we have examples of power being gross or atrocious, right? I think that our value system helps us to come into right relationship with power. You know? And so one of the ways that I've been thinking about this transit, right, is through some underworld mythology, right? And as Pluto and Venus are sort of like ships passing in the night, I think about the story of Orpheus, who lost Eurydice, his great love, who was bit by a viper and died and went to the underworld. And Orpheus used the power of song, Orpheus being the greatest musician of all time, used the power of song to allow to gain entry into the underworld. He put Cerberus, the three-headed dog, to sleep. He charmed Persephone and Hades into allowing him to take Eurydice back to the upper world, back to the land of the living, right? And the only condition was that he couldn't look back as she was following him out of the underworld. And, they make it just to the edge. And then he loses faith that she's behind him, and he looks back and he sees her, and they have one last glance in this look back. And then she is pulled into the underworld forever. Right. And I think about this relationship between Venus and Pluto as, that last look, right? Or also the power of music, right? To charm the underworld deities, to give us access to the realms of the underworld and to the power of the underworld, right? And also this look back and all of that power of love and passion and desire that is held in that moment, in that last look. And in some senses it's this like heartbreaking story of loss, right? And also it is this like supercharged moment that is kind of like this like look of desire that I think we can hold with us, right? Even if like we feel like the thing didn't go the way that we wanted, right? There's also a great charge and a desire and a passion and a power in that moment, in that looking back, and I think that this trine between Venus and Pluto gives us access to that moment, right? It also gives us access to that creative force that allows entry into the underworld, into the unconscious realms, right? That allows us to charm Cerberus and to charm the guards of the underworld, and allows us to enchant the rulers of the underworld, to give us access to things that were previously unavailable. Another way that I've been thinking about this, and another kind of mythological tale of the underworld, is the story of Isis and Osiris. And so Osiris was dismembered by his brother Set, who personifies the forces of destruction and chaos. Right? Osiris was the first pharaoh. And he was a great ruler, and Set became jealous and brought chaos into the land, literally by cutting up Osiris and scattering, cut his body into 14 parts and scattered them across Egypt. And so Osiris's lover, Isis, goes on a pilgrimage to find each of his body parts and to collect them. And on each of the places where she finds one of the body parts, she builds a temple. Right. And so slowly and patiently and diligently, she retrieves all of the dismembered pieces of Osiris and she remembers him, right? She puts him back together. And so we have this theme of remembering, bringing the fragmented pieces back together through the alchemical process of reconnecting and through memory. And I think that this is also there's also a component of remembering our true self, right? So Venus is in domicile and, helps us to get in tune with our core values, which helps direct our actions and inform our sense of self, right? I'm getting to that. Yeah, Carrie was reminding me that Isis couldn't find Osiris's member because it was eaten by a fish, but she fashions one out of gold. But I think that there's this piece of the remembering our value system, remembering our true self and the power of the true self, the power that resides in the self, right? Through, the disappointment, through the loss, through the fragmentation of experience, right? We get scattered and we get scattered across the land, right? And this is an opportunity and a process to recollect the kind of fragmented parts of the self and to unify them around our core value system, right? So Isis, who is a magician and alchemist, brings Osiris back to life, and stitches his 13 pieces together. She didn't find his penis because it got eaten by a fish, so she fashions one out of gold, right? And like somebody was saying, a woman of many talents, and she turns herself into a bird and flies over Osiris and copulates with him. And this is how she becomes pregnant with Horus the Younger. And so Osiris is like, that was great, and I love it here, but I can't stay. I have to go rule over the underworld and keep order there. Right? And so, um, and there's this connection between the afterlife, right, and the continuation of the spirit after death. And this is the realm. What does the fish represent? I haven't considered that one yet. Well, I think that, I'll think about that. I'll get back to you next week. But, this like Osiris is the god of the underworld and Isis is the spirit of life, right? And Venus and Pluto represent this sort of harmonious relationship between these two forces, the process of death and resurrection, and the way that old patterns die so that new parts of the self can come to life and new patterns can emerge, right? And so Libra is a sign, Libra, the sign that Venus just entered and is a sign of Venus's domicile, is represented by the scales, right? And in the Duat, the afterlife, right? The Osiris presides over the weighing of the heart and the judging of the heart against the weight of a feather, right? Again, scales, right? So we have this Libran image of the scales and Osiris sitting there and kind of weighing the heart against the feather. And in the rituals associated with this weighing of the heart gives testimony about the life of the individual who has just passed, right? And so in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the prayer recited is asking the heart not to speak ill against ourselves, right? Not to throw us under the bus. And so in the weighing of the heart, we are asking the heart to be true and not to betray us. And in this trine from Venus to Pluto, we get to consider if our hearts are true. And Venus, again, representing our values, right? And faced with the power of Pluto, we have an opportunity to see if we are living in alignment with our value system. And so when we meet Osiris and have our hearts weighed in the duat, we can say that we say that we lived in accordance with our values, right? Or were we true to our hearts, or were we kind of co-opted by the external forces that pulled us away from our core value system? And when we arrive at the duat and that final judgment, can we say that we loved fiercely and lived truly? And and if we gave our hearts the opportunity to speak and to recount its experiences, what do you think it would say? What do you think the heart wants to say? And so I think as we are coming into this supportive trine, this is an opportunity to tune into the power of the heart, right? And to maybe remember some of that core value system, and to think about, if my heart was being weighed today, how would it speak? And what might I need to do to support this heart and core value system so that it can be in alignment with who I am and the life that I want to live? Okay, got a couple minutes left. On Sunday, September the 1st, we have Uranus stationing direct at 27 degrees and 15 arc minutes of fixed Taurus. So Uranus has been direct since January 27th of 2024, and they will be retrograde from now until January 30th of 2025, when they will station direct at 23 degrees and 15 arc minutes of Taurus. So from now until, the beginning of next year, Uranus is going to move back like 4 degrees. Right. So people with sensitive planets or points in between 27 degrees and 23 degrees of Taurus are or any of the fixed signs will be most directly affected by this retrograde. And this is a quote from Aaron Sullivan in Retrograde Planets, which is a fantastic book. But Uranus is a celestial alarm clock, a rude awakening to the aspects within our nature which have been lying dormant and untried, right? And so Uranus sort of like wakes up parts of the self. And it brings with it a focus on our ideals beyond the realm of the real, as represented by the limiting effects of Saturn. So Uranus pushes us to strive for something greater. And the retrograde creates an internal revolution against systems that no longer support the idealized vision of what could be. So Uranus makes us conscious of everything that is not living up to the idealized vision. And Uranus is a sky god who lives in the mental space beyond the structure of Saturnian reality. Oh, nice. Getting yeah, Uranus right on your sun, stationing direct or stationing retrograde on your sun, kind of like grinding in and waking things up about identity and sense of self, and maybe kind of mission in life. So Uranus shocks us with the vision that it provides and grants us new perspectives through which to view our life. And its retrograde causes us to rethink how we bring the ideal into reality and what containers we can use to hold and channel the electrical energy of these ideals, right? And so Uranus retrograde causes us to rethink what we are rebelling against and what are the ideals that we are striving for. It also causes us to rethink the ways that we are seeking to create authenticity and the methods we are using to affect liberation and change. And I think that there's also like this loosening aspect of Uranus, especially the retrograde. And it helps to like separate and shift perspectives. So with the retrograde, this begins to occur in our internal world, right? So this is helping us to recognize energetic patterns and old narratives that keep us bound up and keep us stuck in bondage. Right. So beginning to understand how we can break free of these old patterns that no longer support the life that we are striving for, the ideals that we are striving for. Okay, last transit of the week, my friends. Sunday, September the 1st, Pluto retrogrades back into Capricorn. So Pluto is coming back for one last stand in Capricorn to dot the I's and cross the T's and wrap up any loose ends from its 16-year transformation and initiation in the sign of Capricorn, right? So this kind of Pluto's journey in Capricorn began in 2008 and exposed the rot in hierarchical structures, in our ideas of safety and stability, the things that we have been seeking to achieve individually and collectively. And so Pluto will station direct on the 11th of October at 29 degrees and 38 arc minutes of Capricorn, and they will be in Capricorn until November the 19th. So this will be their last hurrah in the cardinal Earth sign of Capricorn. And so from now, basically through the US presidential election. And man, you can't write this stuff, you know? And so I think that Pluto and Capricorn again was exposing rot in our structures, in our traditions and hierarchical systems. You know, it was there for 60, excuse me. Pluto was there for 16 years, and we can think about the changes and initiations and transformations that we went through individually and collectively during that time. So, you know, over the past Pluto starts their retrograde on September 1st, or sorry, Pluto enters into Capricorn September 1st, and then stations direct at 29 degrees 38 minutes of Capricorn on October 11th, and then they move direct over that 29th degree again and will leave Capricorn for 250 years on November the 19th, thus beginning their 20-year rule in Aquarius. Some of the highlights from Pluto's time in Capricorn was the 2008 housing crisis, the Trump presidency, which I think revealed a lot of the shadow of American culture. Also, the Pluto-Saturn conjunction, which occurred on January 12th of 2020, which was followed shortly by the COVID pandemic, which revealed a lot of dysfunction in our structures, including lack of social safety nets, lack of preparedness for global catastrophe, the fragility of global supply chains, structural racism, deep social divisions, wealth inequality. You know, there's probably a bunch of other ones. You know, and I think that this is pretty on brand for Pluto moving through Capricorn and kind of like pulling up the stuff that we don't want to look at, that no one wanted to look at, that just got pushed under the rug in the name of progress, right? And then Pluto enters and it's like, well, where's this progress really getting you? And what gets left behind and what gets shoved under the rug? And what doesn't like get acknowledged when we are just focused on getting to the top of the mountain, right? Or accumulating a mountain of wealth. And unfortunately, Pluto doesn't fix things. They just show us what's failing, and then it's us to work on repairing the rot that Pluto revealed. They're sort of like the building inspector, right? They're not going to come in and fix your place. They're going to be like, that's rotten, that's broken, that's not up to code. Like, you fix it or we're condemning this, right? Now, from now, September the 1st until November 15th, Pluto is taking one last swipe at whatever Capricornian structures are still standing. So, you know, we get to sort of have one last opportunity to course correct and to tie up some loose ends in Capricorn, right? And so in your own personal chart, you can see what house it has been transiting since 2008, right? And recognize what's been sort of churning up in your life, what things are emerging, how that house the house topics have been affected by you know, Pluto's journey through there. And so Pluto is the lord of the underworld, and as such is associated with initiation. And through that initiation comes transformation, right? So we can think about what we have been initiated into the past 16 years and the transformations that that is required of us. You know, we can think again about collectively and individually. individually. Right. Pluto is also the shadow and everything that we don't want to look at, right? And wherever Pluto resides, we will be forced to reckon with the forces that of the shadow that we have tried to push out of sight. And as we push these things out of sight, they get more and more powerful until they sort of emerge and require us to deal with them. Right. And by dealing with them, it's not suppressing, right? I think it's integrating, and Pluto is really seeking integration. Pluto is seeking acceptance, right? And I think in Capricorn, Pluto is revealing much about wealth inequality, right? Structural racism, and the corruption of hierarchy and governmental systems, as well as outdated traditions and a longing for an idealized past that keeps us stuck and unable to move forward. Pluto is laundry. Yeah, I really like that. Right. And so I want to just close. We're kind of at time, but I want to close with this quote from Francis Weller. I saw Adrienne Marie Brown posted this quote on their Instagram the other day, and I believe this is the Francis Weller who wrote one of my favorite books, The Wild Edge of Sorrow, which is a great book about grief and processing grief. And I think that, Pluto as Lord of the Underworld has a lot to do with grief, right? Sorrow, and how we process that, right? And I think that one of the problems has been the refusal to acknowledge the areas of grief around the destruction of the natural world, around the structural racism, around the suffering that capitalist systems have created, and the suffering that hierarchical systems have created to humans, to the natural world, to animals, to all sentient beings, right? And I think that there's a lot of grief that we all hold around this, that Capricorn is like, no, we don't have time for that. You got to keep working or you're going to die. Right. And so I think that is part of the shadow, is that like that grief has been just like shoved to the side because we don't have the opportunity, the ability, or the time to deal with it, to sit with it, to mourn and grieve together, because there's the kind of threat that we will be sucked under or crushed in the gears of the machine if we are to slow down, which I think reinforces that sense of grief and sense of loss, because we don't even have the time to process these things because we've got to get up the mountain. And if we don't, we're going to die. And I think that is like what Pluto is revealing. I think that's what Pluto's pulling to the surface and what they're revealing. And so this quote that Adrienne Marie Brown posted from Francis Weller says, "We are seeing the last gasp effort to try and uphold the old structures, keep capitalism going, keep the stock market inflated. They are going to collapse. They have to, because the system is unsustainable, not only in terms of world resources, but just in terms of human capacity to endure that kind of emptiness." And I think that is the like shadow that Pluto is kind of pulling up. The, what we have been seeking to achieve, or what we have been told collectively we need to achieve, or what we have been told we have to do to survive, feels really empty. And there is no there, right? And I think what we are getting the opportunity to look at, right, with this Venus trine to Pluto as they sort of move back into Capricorn for this last caper, right, for this last stand, we get this opportunity to think about what is meaningful, what is valuable. Right? What do I want, instead of like the emptiness that we are sold through this death-based culture, right? How do we live with an ethic of love, and how do we bring in life-based systems that support the mutual growth and safety and security of all sentient beings, right? How do we honor this planet and honor ourselves and honor each other in ways that feels fulfilling, instead of this sort of old narrative, which I don't think functions anymore, that we have to only the strong survive, right? And that we have to fight our way to the top, and we have to hold power over, because if we don't, people will take it from us and throw us under, right? And I think that is a false dichotomy. I think that is a false narrative, and I think that's a load of shit that we've been sold. And I think that we have access to what we need. We live in a planet of abundance, right? We live in a planet that it's sustainable. It has the ability to sustain itself. We live in communities that have the ability to sustain ourselves, right? And I think what Pluto and Capricorn has really revealed is the looking to somebody else to take care of our needs doesn't work, right? And we get to connect in with ourselves and each other and really work to support our needs on like a more local basis. And I'm not saying like, I'm not calling for, drastic change, but what I am, what sort of emerges for me is thinking of, instead of buying into the emptiness that we are sold, how do we find deeper connection with ourselves, right? And our place on the planet, where we reside, right? Where we put our feet, where we lay our head, and the communities that we are in connection with. And how do we make meaning and find meaningful connection in our lives instead of striving for the emptiness that we are sold? So with that, my friends, I wish you all a wonderful week in space. Thanks for tuning in. It is always a pleasure to do this. Next week, we will be talking about the new moon in Virgo, which will be happening on Monday, September the 2nd. That's going down at 11 degrees and 4 arc minutes of mutable Virgo. And it will be opposing Saturn and conjunct the south, and Venus will be conjunct the south node, and Mars in Gemini will be squaring Neptune in Pisces. But you'll find out more about that next week. Same wizard time, same wizard channel. Thank you so much. It is a great pleasure to get to do this. Thank you, Lily and Rainey and Ray on Astrostar Live. Thanks everybody for tuning in. You can check me out on Astrostar. Astrostar is a great astrology-based app. I do readings, I do talks, I do stuff. There's other astrologers, they're doing stuff too. It's pretty awesome. Check us out. I'll put there's a link in my bio on Instagram. I'll put a link in my story or on YouTube, whatever. What else? I do a weekly, well, sometimes weekly astrology themed radio show, which didn't come out this week because I've been too busy, but probably, God willing, will come out next week for the Virgo new moon. So stay tuned for that. I put a link to that in my stories. Yeah, worlds are hard. Words are hard. Worlds and words are hard. Yeah, I put a link to that in my stories whenever it comes out. I try and do it every week. It's been really busy, so I've had to go down to every other week, but hopefully I will be back on my game soon. I am wrapping up my graduate degree, so hopefully I will have more time. So if you want a reading, if you want an astrology reading or a tarot reading from me, feel free to reach out and we can get something on the books. I should have more time starting mid-September and beginning of October it is on. So if you've ever wanted a reading with me, feel free to reach out. You can book your reading through Astrostar Live or hit me up in my DMs and we can get something on the books for y'all coming up. Other than that, that is all the astro weather that is fit to print, my friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is my great honor and pleasure to be here with you each and every week. Again, my name is Joan Emerson Bell, Blind Stallion Space Wizard, and I am your weekly wizard. So thank you and have a great week in space. Till next time, my friends, may the force be with you. Bye now.